Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, as we follow this Rex Heuermann case, it is one of those cases, one of those stories that comes around maybe every 50, every 100 years, and thank God, because we are after all, talking about a serial killer. But from a police perspective, and of course, which we pride ourselves in being true crime from a police perspective, the most important players in this case are the investigators, are the police detectives. Ray Tierney, the district attorney's office investigators, because what this case ultimately is about, it's about the evidence. What's going to nail this 6'6" 300-pound serial killer is not profilers talking about serial killers. It's not going to be TV pundits talking about this case and how far it's gone back and where the bodies were dumped and all of those things. It's not attorneys, self-serving attorneys, or representing clients on the periphery of this case. What this case is about is this man here on the screen. Ray Tierney discusses the planning document evidence. That was the document that people are calling basically Rex Heuermann's manifesto. And that is one of the most powerful pieces of evidence I have ever seen in my police career. And because it's backed up by other evidence, that is considered a document, of course, documentary evidence. This serial killer, this monster on the screen, Rex Heuermann, documented much of the heinous acts that he took part in. And as a piece of evidence, that is just incredible. And what we also must never forget is the victims in this case. And so far, this demon, as Rodney Harrison, the former police commissioner of Suffolk County, said, so far this demon, Rex Heuermann, has been indicted for 6 of them. And I believe very shortly he will be indicted for a 7th in the case of Valerie Mack. And we have to always, never lose sight of specifically that is what this case is about. And there's a picture of Valerie Mack up on the screen. We must never forget that these are the drivers of this case. This is why detectives pride themselves that work for homicide, proudly say, we work for God. Because if they're talking for the person who's deceased, the person who was murdered, who can't speak for themselves. And that's what these detectives and these investigators will be talking about. And let's not allow extraneous bullshit in this case to muddy the waters. Let's make sure we get this guy convicted, all right? And then the Johnny Rays and the Robert Macedonios and the Zeph Matevs, all of these attorneys that are presenting their extraneous information, that's what I'll call it. So let's not allow them to muddy the waters of this case, because this case is about those victims we spoke about. And it's about securing a conviction for one of the worst serial killers in the history of this country. And the first 4 we must remember is the ones known as the Gilgo Four: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. And just, of course, recently, very, very recently, we added these 2 young ladies to it, Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. And that is what this case is about. And this case is about the evidence, because the evidence is what's going to put this demon in prison for the rest of his life. And I think we should almost wish and I know there's many anti-death penalty people here. I wish we had the death penalty, if only as a bargaining chip to get this demon Rex Heuermann to speak, to talk. Because will he ever give up and confess to what he did? He's not going to now. He's taking this to trial. There's no doubt in my mind. He wants his day in court. He wants his day or days and weeks or months in the limelight because he's that type of sick individual. So it's our job to push these investigators who have done an outstanding job. Ever since this Gilgo Beach task force was formed, I'm proud of the work they're doing, and I'm not even involved in it. As a former police officer, sergeant, detective sergeant in a homicide squad, I'm proud of the work that these guys have done since they founded this task force. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your wigs, hold on to your service dog, your wife, your kids, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Biden.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
You know, as we speak about this case, and we have all the psychologists, and we have the serial killer profilers, and all of what I always refer to as the talking heads on television, I raised the question last night with Mike Geary. Do profilers ever help catch the perpetrator? And really, the answer to that is usually no, they don't. They don't help catch the perpetrator. However, isn't it good to know the characteristics of the person who they were looking for? And we spoke about FBI profiler Jim Clemente the other night that in 2011 had a profile in regards to the then unknown Gilgo Beach serial killer that is pretty damn accurate. Pretty damn accurate 12, 13 years later. It describes someone just like Rex Heuermann, personality-wise. And this is not a kind of case for the squeamish. As we learn what this evil man did, and as we come up with more cases on this evil man, we find out his mental thoughts, the way he worked, modus operandi, his signature, the staging of crime scenes. Sometimes crime scenes and the recovery of bodies, especially in sexually oriented murders, the body is posed in a certain way to shock the people that find it, the police that recover the body. And this gives the perpetrator satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, to pose the body in a sexualized position. These are all the things we're learning. You know, we talk about his modus operandi, his signature, the staging of the crime scenes. And now this planning document that sort of gives a blow-by-blow description of what he was doing, how he was planning. Is that consistent also with who he is? Do architects, is that part of their job? To plan, to write things down? Yeah. Yeah. And he carried over what he learned as an architect into his second career as a serial murderer. Think of that. Think of that when we think of who this man is and all the other things we've learned about him and members of his family. The other night, Chris Cuomo had on a very learned man by the name of Dr. Gary Bricado, who gives a pretty good description and the whys and hows of someone like Rex Heuermann operates, thinks, and commits their heinous crimes. Let me just play some of Dr. Gary Bricado, who was on Chris Cuomo's show.
This to our next question. Serial killers are a very unique animal within humanity or in humanity. Let's bring in forensic psychologist and visiting scholar at Boston College, Gary Bricado. It's good to have you, Gary. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I bet you share the same perspective, right? Ray Tierney is like from a bygone era of just the facts. You know, he's got that Dragnet vibe to him, and it's refreshing, you know, given how much.
You know, I just, you know, I have to just interject here. No, Ray Tierney is a prosecutor. He's all about business. He's all about doing his job. He's not about TV. He's not about sensationalism. Although, as I said a while ago, he never met a camera he didn't like. He goes on TV, but you could see he's all business. He's all about getting the evidence and proving this case, because this is a case that the eyes of the entire world are on this case. And how Ray Tierney performs his job as a prosecutor is going to be viewed by people all over this world. But that's who he is. He's a trained prosecutor, right? He's an investigator. He knows how to run murder investigations. Not a simple task. Not just from the police perspective, but from the district attorney's perspective, who's putting together a team of prosecutors, a team of great legal minds to put this evidence together. Imagine the amount of evidence they have to collect, categorize, and decide which order they present this evidence. How about even releasing this evidence as discovery to the defense attorney? You saw Robert Brown the other day on TV, and when he realized now he's got 6 murders to defend his client Rex Heuermann against, I could see his brain look like it was going to overheat, you know. But in the same way, Ray Tierney, even though I'm sure he has a team of attorneys that are helping him on this case, how many meetings do you think they have a week, the Gilgo Beach Task Force? And who's involved in these meetings? What else are they looking at? Are the investigators directed to other states, other countries, other places? How about all the information when I talk about muddying the waters? Other people are bringing in information that doesn't seem to me credible. Do you think they have to vet that? You bet, because that could be presented by the defense to muddy the waters, all right? And we all know, we've heard the name Chief James Burke, and he is the number one mud in this case that's going to muddy the waters of this case. And of course, that's the way Michael Brown, the attorney for Rex Heuermann, is going to go. He's going to go exactly that way. He's got nowhere else to go. I've never seen so much evidence in a murder case in my life. So let me get back to Dr. Gary Bricado.
Much hype we see with these guys being more politician than policeman these days. But
Absolutely.
Rex Heuermann is winding up to be a real curveball to us. You know, at first it seemed like, well, maybe this is not the kind of guy who's usually a serial killer. But have you ever seen anything like that planning document that they found?
Actually, there was very little in the planning document that was surprising to me as someone with expertise in serial sexual homicide. Most serial killers are men who repetitively kill victims, usually women or children, for sexual purposes. And the idea is that there is usually the playing out of a very meticulous fantasy that is about repetitively taking revenge against someone who has hurt you, asserting dominance, control over someone, whether it's women, people who mocked you, a family member, mother, father, etc.
You know, I just want to interject. That's an interesting case. He's repeatedly taking revenge against others who wronged him in his life. And we heard, or we understood from investigators who spoke to some other students who went to high school with Rex Heuermann. And then they said he was continually bullied, viciously bullied. Is that part of his revenge? I'm not a psychologist, all right? And the fact that he had a very domineering mother who dominated him. And is that who he's seeking revenge against? He had a father that died when he was 12 years old. Is that causing some anger that he somehow psychosexually is taking it out on others and becoming a sadistic man and taking it out on these small little women who are escorts? And how does it manifest itself in a sexual nature? Let's go back to Dr. Gary Bricado.
etc. And those fantasies start pretty young and they ultimately get enacted. They spill over into acting out. It's very interesting because I've always thought that in repetitively killing women, these kinds of guys are really repetitively killing the same person symbolically and perfecting it over and over like a director that's trying to get the movie perfect. Yes.
But Doc, didn't you notice that with the information that we have right now, there's almost nothing to motive. There's almost nothing emotional in it. It's all.
You know, I'm amazed at how little Cuomo knows about everything. The guy's unbelievable. Motive. What are we talking about? Motive. The guy's a psychosexual sadist. He's a serial killer. That's his motive. I mean, this guy comes out of, he's got a law degree. I find it hard to believe that he has a law degree. It's unbelievable, but it makes absolutely no sense where he comes out of left field with this nonsense.
Checklists that seem to be designed to allow him to do this as much as possible.
Correct.
I mean, it seems like it's more the architect in him than it is the monster in him that is making that document.
Well, what the documents suggest is that there was some degree of torture. And so the stimulation would be associated with probably keeping the female victim for some time and engaging in all kinds of acts. For example, there's a reference in the document to one victim who is hanged and the rope snaps because it's not done properly. And there are references to toys and wooden objects and things which imply to me that there was a process of torture that would have involved tools and instruments that were part of a fantasy that was being played out over and over again. Usually this kind of offender records this in some way. They either have an extremely good visual memory for it, or they're photographing it or filming it or drawing it. And we do see reference to photographic material also there, which is very important when understanding that the motive is essentially to get a thrill from perfecting the bringing to life of a sexual violent fantasy over and over again. And these men are very prolific.
Prolific. All right. So that's the last question. I really appreciate you, Doc. The question for me is not just as a local, right? Because literally the last two victims were found in my backyard, figuratively. Okay. We do know that serial killers sometimes take time off. Okay.
Right.
What is your suspicion has been going on since 2014? Do you think he stopped, or do you think we're going to learn whether he decides to talk, as they sometimes do, because they're very braggadocious, or through just forensic and police work? Do you think he kept killing?
Well, if Heuermann is guilty, the average age of at which one starts to commit this kind of offense is about 26. And there are these cooling off periods that can come between the offenses, but they don't tend to be years. Usually the person goes on and on and on until captured or eliminated in some other way. I will tell you also that in this case, because this person took such measures to conceal, learning from other offenders and learning how to outpace the science, he evolved. And so he starts out with dismemberment, which I can tell you from my own research is mostly done to get rid of evidence. That's why you get rid of tattoos, the hands, the head, fingerprints, things like that. You butcher those. And then eventually he clearly got bolder and then started keeping the victims in a pile somewhere to visit, probably to visit or to reminisce or to feel as if he possessed them. But originally what it looks like is he was just eliminating them to avoid capture. I think he would have been very prolific. The average number of victims for this kind of offender is 12.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please.
He was, Dr. Gary Bucato, outstanding, and, one of the things about about serial killers, about homicide, about things that you're not an expert in, sit back and listen. Admittedly, in my coverage of this case, going back a while, I made a lot of wrong calls. I predicted early on that the Gilgo case had more than one killer. I've changed up. I believe that Rex Heuermann is the only killer. And, when we talk about the theme of this show, what's going to muddy the waters? Well, there's people trying to convince everybody that there was a whole team of killers. That makes no sense for who this guy is. This guy is a loner. He works alone. That document that shows his planning, he plans alone. He tortured the victims. He tortures them alone. Once you have anyone else involved, you're increasing the chance of getting caught probably by 100%. And again, this guy, Gary Bucato, expert. So listen, Chris Cuomo, don't come out of left field with something that's it wasn't even close to being correct. I don't know why I'm criticizing Chris Cuomo, but as I said, we all have a lot to learn. Don't think you're a know-it-all and start telling this guy who's a serial killer expert things that you think when you're 100% wrong. I don't know. It's just, and look, we all have opinions, but this case is it's just absolutely incredible. And when we talk about the evidence, again, get back to the evidence. This case is about the evidence. And then, of course, it's about the victims. And think of how long this case has been going on. Now we know the first victim that we know of was killed in 1993. And that was Sandra Castilla, 1993. And we know she was dismembered. And her body was recovered out in Southampton. That's further east of Manorville. And then she was dismembered and her body was dumped near Gilgo. And when we talk about the evidence on the case, how they identified Rex Heuermann as being her killer is absolutely unbelievable, because the evidence and the chart, I would go to the chart that they have. And of course, the planning document is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I'm going to put it up on the screen because it's so vast and the evidence in it is so remarkable. And this is the chart they have on page 22 of this document. And I'm going to put it up there. You could see it. The first victim, of course, Sandra Castilla, designation in bail letter, male hair on Castilla, location of the hair recovery, a tape lift of a striped shirt above victim's head. Results: 99.96% of North American population can be excluded, but not Rex Heuermann. That basically says it's his hair on her body. The single nucleotide polymorphism. They call it SNP or SNPs, DNA results. 4.347 times 10 to the 332nd power. That's a number none of us can even comprehend that it's Rex Heuermann. Female hair on Sandra Castilla. Victim's right arm. 99.98% of North American population can be excluded, but not witness number 3. Witness number 3, we believe, is Rex Heuermann's first wife. So her hair, back from 1993, was found on Sandra Castilla. How powerful is that as evidence? Then let's move along. Jessica Taylor, male hair underneath Taylor, on surgical drape underneath the victim. Look, he used drop cloths to make sure he could collect the evidence and then destroy the remaining evidence on these drop cloths. 99.96% of North American population can be excluded, but not Rex Heuermann. And also going to the SNPs DNA, again, it's some ridiculous number. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, female hair on Barnes, buckle of belt restraining lower body. It was Asa Ellerup's hair, Rex Heuermann's wife. Megan Waterman, first of 2 female hairs on Waterman, outside head area. The hair belongs to Asa Ellerup and Victoria Heuermann. That's the daughter of Rex Heuermann. And the SNP, the nuclear DNA, comes back to Asa Ellerup. Unbelievable. Megan Waterman, male hair on Waterman, bottom portion of burlap. 99.9% of North American population can be excluded, but not Rex Heuermann. Amber Costello, female hair on Costello, tape in the area of the head. 99.98% of North American population can be excluded, but not Asa Ellerup or Victoria Heuermann. And similar with the nuclear DNA, comes back to Victoria Heuermann. Just incredible evidence. And let's realize the first victim was over 30 years ago. The first victim being Sandra Castilla. How they collected that evidence and how they stored that evidence and how the evidence is still good today, that it was able to identify Rex Heuermann, Asa Ellerup, Victoria Heuermann, just incredible. And the science behind it, just unbelievable. So when we talk about that this case is about the evidence, they have an unbelievable amount of evidence and scientific evidence that's going to prove this case. And we all have to marvel at this. It's just absolutely incredible. Let me play this here.
Now I want to discuss some of the newly discovered digital evidence in the case. Before I discuss that, I just wanted to clarify some of the things that we've been talking about in our earlier press conferences. You were asked I was asked specifically about smart devices and digital devices that were recovered from the home and business of the defendant in connection with this case. So I just want to catalog that for you so you get a sort of flavor of what it was. We've recovered 15 different types of cameras. We've recovered 27 computers. We've recovered 58 internal hard drives. We recovered 22 external hard drives or solid drives. We recovered 46 cell phones. We recovered 9 Wi-Fi routers, 44 SD micro cards, which are like jump routers, 17 tablets, 42 USB devices, 8 laptops, 50 hotel cards, 4 GPS devices, 11 music devices, 36 SIM cards, 33 miscellaneous items, and 647 CD, floppy disks, or VSH or miscellaneous tapes. Again, in the months subsequent to the arrest, we've been endeavoring through our own office and with the help of the Secret Service to analyze that massive amount of data. Analysis of those devices has revealed, certainly, that Heuermann had a significant collection of violent, bondage, and torture pornography, which was dating back to 1994. And that material was very similar to the condition that the two latest victims were left in. In addition to that, it is alleged that the pornographic images that were...
So in essence, Rex Heuermann was an educated serial killer. He was studying bondage and pornographic magazines, and he copied things that he saw to his own victims. Is that evidentiary also? You bet it is. I mean, outrageously. Someone in the chat said something about they could plant the hair. Something, if you think that they planted the hair, I got you a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. But because not only is their hair, that's not the only evidence they have. When it's backed up by all of this digital evidence, and I will guarantee you, remember he mentioned something about cameras? How many pictures do you think they've collected so far that they just haven't told us about yet? Because that, when we understand the demented mind of a serial killer, they want to keep reliving what they've done. How many times do you guys listening to this show, how many times do you think he's revisited Gilgo? Just drove by there. Maybe pulled over somewhere and took a walk around there. What was that about, you think? Well, serial killers are known to go back to the place that they've dumped bodies because they relive the thrill of it. How many times do you think he's gone back to Manorville? You think he's ever done that before? I think he has, because he exhibits the classic characteristics of most serial killers. We spoke a great deal the other night about organized and disorganized offenders. And for the most part, Rex Heuermann was an organized offender. However, he showed lots of traits of a disorganized offender. And what do I mean by that? Well, a disorganized offender, first of all, the fact that he's a hoarder and his house looked the way it looked, you think that gave us any hints to who he is or who he was? Who he is, I would say. Is that a sign of disorganization to be a hoarder? To live in a home that is clearly the eyesore of the block? Not just an eyesore, but it was a hoarder's paradise, basically. It's people that never throw anything out. That's a sign of being disorganized. How about the fact that he dismembered the bodies? That is a disorganized offender. So then how was he considered organized? Well, he had a job. He had a family. He lived in a home. He was intelligent. A lot of you may say he wasn't that smart. He couldn't spell, but he ran his own company, didn't he? He planned things. He made lists. He had a good car. Made sure he had a good car, right? If we believe the stories, they say he was affluent, that he had a lot of money. You would never know that again, going back to the house, the disorganized house. So it's not uncommon that serial killers have traits of both organized and disorganized offenders. And as we learn more about Rex Heuermann, when we heard Chris Cuomo say, there's no motive, take a second and listen and stop trying to be a know-it-all. The motive was sexual. There's the motive right there. Psychosexual, right? He's a psychosexual sadist. That is the motive. And Dr. Gary Bricado said, most serial killers start at about the age of 26. And the average amount of people they kill is 12. Rex Heuermann may have started at the age of 29. Well, that's the age he was when Sandra Castilla was killed. And there's close 11 or 12 bodies, if he can be attributed, if they can connect those bodies, all of them, to Rex Heuermann. And I believe, and I am absolutely no expert, and I've been wrong numerous times during this case, and I will totally admit to that, I believe he's got more bodies on him that have yet to be discovered. And again, you know, you can only put someone in life in prison for the one life that they have. Based on the 6 murders that he's been indicted for right now, he's going away for numerous life terms, even though we all only have one life. But for some reason, the criminal justice system will sentence you to 6 life terms, which is what he deserves. He really deserves the death penalty. But since we don't have that, that's not an option in New York State. We all want to hear that they're clearing more cases. Valerie Mack, no doubt, will be the next case to drop. And then he'll be charged with 7 murders. Again, he can only be sentenced to the one life he has. Make it 7 life terms. Because we never want to see this monster ever again, or anyone like him ever again, walking as a free man. So let me go back to Ray Tierney.
Access by Heuermann are consistent with the crime scenes of both Sandra Castilla and Jessica Taylor. Now, as part of our processing of the electronic devices, the task force discovered a Microsoft Word document entitled HK 2002 through 2004. That was discovered on a laptop in unallocated space, meaning there was an attempt to erase that document. But as most forensic experts know, that even when a document is erased on a device, it is the user could no longer access that document, but forensic experts using particular software can retrieve it, and this document was retrieved in this case. It was a locally created draft, which means the document itself was created on the laptop. It wasn't downloaded from the internet. The document was modified. It was originally created in 2000, and it was overwritten a number of times and modified between 2001 and 2002. Now, as alleged in the bail application, the task force believes that this is a planning document, and it was utilized by Heuermann to methodically blueprint and plan out his kills with excruciating detail. We allege that this document evinces the defendant's intent in committing the charged crimes, that his intent was specifically to locate these victims, to hunt them down, and to bring them under his control and to kill them. His motivations, meticulous planning, and clear intent is obvious. His intent was nothing short but to murder these victims. And we allege that the methodology, that the exact method by which these murders were committed in excruciating detail in that document is in some cases identical to the methodology to murder the 6 victims in this case. Now, I don't want to speak further on the document. I believe the document speaks for itself. So if anybody has any questions about the document, I'd be more than willing to answer them. But before turning it over for questioning, I want to reiterate right from the very beginning of this case, from the onset of the case, the first indictment, we said that the case was not over. We said we were going to continue to investigate the case of the Gilgo Four and find more evidence. We've done that. We've said that we were going to expand the investigation both on Gilgo and off and to investigate new cases. We've done that. And that's resulted in the 2 new charges that you see here today. So that's what we've done. That's what we've continued to do. And, my office, along with our partners, are not going to stop. This case continues.
I think it gives us a lot of confidence in hearing Ray Tierney speak that forcefully and that emphatically on, we told you that we would not stop, that the Gilgo Beach investigation was going to continue. It was going to go outside Gilgo Beach. We will not stop until we're satisfied that we've basically crossed every T and dotted every I. He didn't say that specific lingo, but that is reading into it. They want to make sure that they can stick every murder that this demon, well, I'll use Rodney Harrison's words, has done. From the chat, web fan, hi, retired Officer Cannon, are there any news about the records of the Trapeze Club in New York City, the hangout for Rex and the Swinger Cops? I suspect one or more provided victims and the count could pass 100. Web fan, I think that based that evidence that was presented by Attorney John Ray, and he had affidavits from, 3 people in regards to that, and he swore that the female that was there that night, and according to the, he claimed it was a New York City narcotics detective and an African-American female, and the third person in the car was Karen Vergata. He just said that. And what I would do, and one other thing I just want to mention is that Ray Tierney has never, ever mentioned Attorney John Ray or any of the alleged evidence he's brought forward. I have to assume that Ray Tierney does not feel the evidence that John Ray has brought forth is credible. But will they have to take time and investigate it and vet the information? One of the ways they said the female that was with them, and I forget the exact year, I think it was back in 1996, and he mentioned that club Trapeze, La Trapeze in New York City, and supposedly or allegedly Rex Heuermann put a document on the wall asking for other swingers and to come out to his house. That is totally inconsistent with the personality of a serial killer. Just makes absolutely no sense. So, web fan, I don't want to disparage what you're saying. If you believe it, fine. I don't believe a word that John Ray presented in that press conference. I think all of the information, if they can vet it, something, add me to the choir. But I believe that the Gilgo Beach Task Force will now have to go and take their time and reinvestigate that. But those are some of the things I'm talking about that's going to muddy the waters in this case. This case is about the evidence. This case is about a serial killer. And I don't find that story or the people who swore in affidavits credible. I mean, this woman's remembering things from 1996 like they were yesterday. And meanwhile, she appears to be a drug abuser. I don't know how she could remember it that clearly. So to answer your question, web fan, I don't believe that whole story. And I know there are those that do, but I'm not one of them. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and hit the like button. Share us with your friends and your family. If you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel memberships, which incidentally is growing by leaps and bounds because of you guys making it grow. And we have 5 different levels on our YouTube channel memberships. Getting back to this case, of course, when he talks about, I'm referring to Ray Tierney, when he talks about the digital evidence, and cameras. And, you know, where Rex Heuermann was really a student of serial killing. There were 2 books, FBI books, that he referred to. The Mind Hunter, written by an FBI agent named John Douglas. That was somewhat like Rex Heuermann's Bible, that he would read this book and use countermeasures. What are countermeasures? Countermeasures are measures you take to defeat the investigators, to defeat what the investigators are going to look for. And Rex Heuermann was using that book as a way not to get caught. And just so interesting. Now, this is another attorney. His name is Robert Macedonio, and he represents Rex Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerup. And it's been asked numerous times, what do you think Asa Ellerup's involvement was in this case? Well, according to the Suffolk County Police, they cleared her. She's not involved. I always felt that she had to know something because she was living with, again, a demon. This man doing these, or else she just looked the other way. And is that feigning ignorance? Or, I mean, look, there's a lot of things in this case that are hard to explain. And that's one of them, whether or not Asa Ellerup knew about it. Let's listen to Robert Macedonio. And don't forget, there's money in this. Asa Ellerup got a 7-figure advance to do a documentary on her husband, the serial killer, who, according to Robert Macedonio, she still doesn't believe he's capable of doing these crimes.
Good. Now,
Good to see you.
Do I understand correctly that your client and the kids have not heard any of the things that I just said yet, that you're going to have to take them through it still?
They have not read the extensive bail package that the DA put forth yesterday to the public, detailing the investigative steps that were taken and all the allegations that are laid out in there that led to the arrest and indictment of Rex on the new 2 new homicides from 1993 and 2003. They have not. I discussed the dates and the victims. I did not discuss in detail how they obtained those indictments. I want to go.
You know, those dates that he's referring to, it's already been established that on the date that Sandra Castillo went missing, that Asa Ellerup and the children were out of town. The same thing for Jessica Taylor. The date she went missing, they were out of town. That was Rex Heuermann's MO. That is how he did things, because we found out he was killing them in the house. So he couldn't have anyone else in the house when he was doing his murderous torture of these poor women.
Over that with them in person. I think it's more appropriate. And they have not watched the media reports. We tell them, yeah.
I mean, are you worried about how it's going to hit them? I mean, this is some really ghoulish stuff. I mean, this guy, you know, unless somebody planted this stuff on him, he's a real monster, this guy.
You know, Chris, I know you had Mr. Tierney on last night. I previously said this is one of the most extensive investigations that I've seen in my 32 years of practicing law. The job that's being done by this task force is extremely impressive. We'll have to sit down and discuss that with Asa and go through the details of that. The first one, 1993, she was not with Rex. He was married to his first wife. She wasn't residing in the residence, so she would have no information regarding that. The second one, 2003, you know, Ms. Taylor in Mandeville, again, the DA puts in his bail application. She was not in the jurisdiction. She was out of the jurisdiction with, ironically, a kindergarten classmate of Victoria's up in Snuggles Notch in Vermont. Rex went through great detail, as you said, in his diaries and his homicide handbooks, to have this all conducted when she was out of town. His diary even indicates Asa away, family vacation. This is going to go down in the history, if it's proven true, of one of the most prolific serial killers that detailed and documented every one of these crimes.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean,
you know, what I thought about it today, how did Rex get caught? What happened with Rex, I think technology caught up with Rex. 1993, 2003, cell phone data, cell phones were very archaic. DNA was at its infancy. And I believe that's why, if it's.
Robert Macedonio is correct. Technology did catch up with him. But what was the number one piece of evidence that enabled them to identify Rex Heuermann? Does anyone remember? After 2 months after the Gilgo Beach task force was established, it was the Chevy Avalanche. That was from an eyewitness, saw that vehicle. And a female detective from the New York State Police identified the vehicle and the person who owned it, who turned out to be that 6'6", 300-pound ogre that owned the car. So now, when you have him ID'd as an investigator, now you could start working backwards a little bit, because now he's ID'd. Now we can all take a deep breath. Now we start looking and we start conducting surveillance and we start monitoring him. They listened and they tapped into his computer remotely. I love that. So he doesn't even know. He's still making entries and committing crimes on his computer. And they're getting all the information, and he doesn't even know there's a search warrant on his computer. Technology. The burner phones making calls into these escorts. Tremendous evidence they have. So whoever said before they could have planted the hairs. Oh, yeah, did they plant the phones? Did they plant the car? Did they plant the testimonial evidence? I mean, ridiculous. Some people have no, it's just, this case is a, I guess you could call it a manual. It's a learning guide for other investigators on what to do and what not to do. And the first 4 or 5 years of this case is a manual on how not to conduct an investigation. When Chief James Burke was involved, kicking the FBI off the case that you don't need them anymore, ridiculous, right? Then in 2022, when Rodney Harrison, former NYPD chief of department, and Ray Tierney became involved and established the Gilgo Beach task force, 2 months later, the Gilgo Beach killer was identified. How's that for good police work, right? There's no one that can deny that actually occurred. That now, all of a sudden, there was outstanding police work done in the first 2 months of the Gilgo task force. And who was responsible? Well, Suffolk County Police, New York State Police, FBI, Ray Tierney's own investigators out of the Suffolk County DA's office, and to be really thinking outside the box, Suffolk County Corrections. Why were corrections important? Well, because escorts get arrested all the time. Let's talk to them. Let's interview them. Let's see if any of them had contact with Rex Heuermann. Amazing amount of information you can get from interviews. And we use that information to keep building this case, to build this file, to find out who we're dealing with. So just absolutely incredible.
If it's Rex, the MO changed. He was realizing, and you look at his computer searches, if that were obtained from his hard drive, different ways of committing homicides and not getting caught. That's why the MO, I think, changes.
I hear you. I just, so much of this stuff was found in the house, and it adds to the obvious suggestion to people is how you didn't know. You were with this guy for 27 years. I'm not implicating her as a co-conspirator in any of the crimes. I'm just saying all this stuff in the house that he uses to do this, and there's this belief now that he was doing it in the home. You have to wonder, how did she not know? How does she explain that?
Well, I'll explain, Rex. If you look at the video I have up now, those two Bilko doors that are open down there, you go down those doors, right inside those doors is a room about 12 by 12, which is right outside of that room with the gun vault. Rex had a workshop, a wood workshop set up there, with his tools and various items in there. how many families or children even go down to their dad's workbench and play down there? They don't. That's, the dad's area. They may be in the other parts of the basement. So it's not an area they would frequent. The gun vault was put in because Rex was a, member of NRA. He had, 287, 289 guns. That was put in to keep his firearms in there. So the family was really never in that room. So that was kind of it wasn't like an off limits area, but they didn't frequent that area that well. And it appears from the DA's search, I went into the residence after the search. That appears to be those two rooms, the primary focus of the DA's search, both forensically with the push pins, with the luminol, the spray, the panelings were removed. That appears to be the search that was conducted the second time when they went in last month.
Why do you think that the ex-wife's hair, the first ex-wife's, and Asa's hair and the daughter's hair, why is their hair found around the bodies?
Well, you're an attorney. Because hair transfer could come out by me riding in your car. My hair could be left in your car. It's very simple. It's an easy to have a transfer of DNA or hair. That doesn't necessarily have to be at the crime scene. People come in and out of my office all day long. Their DNA, their hair, their fingerprints could be left in my office every single day. Asa resided in that house. The first wife resided in that house. So it's easy to say a hair could have been transferred. Back in 1993, you were unable to get DNA from a hair. 2024, you are. So Rex never even thought of that. One of the interesting things, we have a copy of the search warrant. The book, as the DA mentions throughout his bail application, Mind Hunter. It appears that book was one of the focuses of the search, going in and getting that book that Rex had in that house. So it's interesting. If true, this was really thought out, well detailed.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com.
Well, that is all amazing. I'm sorry I didn't get Chris Cuomo off the screen before he did his little promo. The book Mindhunter. And, we spoke about it last night, myself and Professor Mike Geary, and we used the term countermeasures. And countermeasures is simply studying really what your opponent does and coming up with a way to counter it. It's just like, as they say, for every offense, there's a defense, right? So Rex Heuermann is trying not to get caught. So he's studying how the FBI conducts these investigations, because guess what? He doesn't want to get caught, does he? No. And he also does something known in the military world also as recon. And that's simply short for reconnaissance. So why is a serial killer reconning? Well, he's reconning the locations he's going to meet these escorts. Because what is he reconning for? What is he looking for? Well, he's looking for a location that has no video cameras. He's looking for a location that's dark. He's looking for a location where there's not a lot of people around. And so that's why he's reconning. And that is one, when you talk about someone that is preparing not to get caught, of course, that is what Rex Heuermann doing. And that is why he was doing a recon. Because guess what today? Is there any place you can go in this world that there's no video cameras up? Any commercial location, any store, any shopping center, any place where people gather has video cameras. My home, I have 2 Ring cameras. They give me peace of mind, right? I mean, I could be away and I could see someone come up my driveway, bro. And then comes out the Mac 10. Just kidding, And a loudspeaker says, "Announce yourself." You can actually do that, You can actually be in another state and scream at someone in your driveway, "Get out of here," from a Ring camera. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's absolutely true. And so now, not just are there commercial locations have video is all over this world. And many of you people listening right now probably are laughing. Yeah, I got a Ring camera on my house. And many people do. Wayne Randall's, dash cameras everywhere too. People have them on cars, right? K-Me says Ring cameras are the best. Marnie Norris Photography. Hello. Emily Guthrie. Ha, 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 you can. So yeah, many homes, because doesn't it give you a little sense of security that you have a camera? You have a camera watching your home. Camera's not going to prevent anything, but a camera sure is going to catch the person that did it. Some of them are so clear you can actually identify someone. Just absolutely incredible. Again, when I speak about muddying the waters of this case, there's so much extraneous information coming out of this case. And one of the things that'll never satisfy anyone, and I can't go into the whole thing today because it's so complicated, and is Shannon Gilbert. Her death, to going out to see a client in Oak Beach, being driven there by a chauffeur, and then the 911 call is horrendous when you listen to that 911 call. And then they find her body approximately 13 months later. And it wasn't in Gilgo. Her body was found in Oak Beach, is approximately, I don't know, you believe 9 miles away from Gilgo. But her death was actually the catalyst to getting the investigation really sparked up and really putting a boot behind the investigators doing the search of Gilgo. And Johnny Ray, I'll give him credit. He kept this case alive, kept these cases alive. But does anyone out there think Rex Heuermann killed Shannon Gilbert? Knowing what you know about that case, it was ruled by the Suffolk County medical examiner as undetermined how she died. It was never ruled as a homicide. Then there's those people that think that it's a cover-up by the Suffolk County Police. To believe that, you would also have to believe that the medical examiner was involved in that cover-up. But many people, Lisa Mitchell, I could see you in the chat. You think that Rex Heuermann committed the Shannon Gilbert case. That you can think whatever you want, but I just think that Rex Heuermann, if he did that he would have been seen out there, and so many witnesses would have reported that we saw this 6'6" 300-pound man, and there was no reports of that. There was no witnesses of that. And Shannon Gilbert did go there on a job, on an escort job, to meet a very certain client who they know. And everyone out there, from the people whose doors she knocked on, who she was screaming for help, every one of them have been interviewed. And I'm not going to go in deeply into the case, but again, the police ruled, Suffolk County Police ruled it was not a homicide. And so did the medical examiner. So let's, for argument's sake, we could still include that in the Gilgo cases. But Liminal from the chat, she was on a 9/11 call prior. There is more circumstantial evidence to suggest that she passed after becoming lost in the marsh in the night. Lisa Mitchell, PAC will be subpoenaed, right? If that case becomes part of the Gilgo Beach case, but it's not part of it now. So I don't know if he will be subpoenaed to testify about what. That case is not listed in the Gilgo Beach cases, so I don't know. HC Teacher, did you watch the woman who went out on a date with about 9 months ago on YouTube? What she said was scary. Yeah, and I'm going to play a little bit of that. But first, let me go to another News Nation report. And we were talking about other things that have possibly been, the Gilgo Beach Task Force has to think about.
It came out of court for the man accused in the Gilgo Beach murders. Prosecutors saying that Rex Heuermann kept a planning document that he used in his luring, killing, and disposal of his victims. Last week, he was charged in the murders of 2 more women, bringing the total number of victims to 6. Attorney John Ray is with us now. He represents some of the victims' families, including Jessica Taylor, one of the most recent victims linked to Rex Heuermann. Welcome back, sir. First of all, I want to get your reaction to this alleged blueprint outlining what he was doing and how he was doing it.
Well, his blueprint is not only condemns him, but it really lays forth the demonic episodes that he engaged in slaughtering these girls. He didn't just is hard a bad word, but he didn't just murder them. He tortured them awfully. And this program that he set up in his own computer explains in detail what he was going to do and how. It's been described as a plan, and in a way it is, but I think the document that he created is also a checklist of things that he wanted to make sure he could remember to do in order to escape detection. And that the checklist is all grossly misspelled words, suggesting that either he did that deliberately or that he's on some kind of drug. And from what I know of serial killers and the experiences all across this country, they typically are on. They pump themselves up with drugs when they do these things. So that could be a factor in all of this. But no, you can't imagine even a bad human doing what this man says that he plotted to do, and then obviously he did. So it's a shocker. And I'm the lawyer for the Gilbert family and for several other women who escaped him and lived to tell the tale. And they're in complete shock.
Yeah, I mean,
how else do you describe it?
It's a nightmare, and then the thought of surviving it, knowing what he is alleged to have done. How are the families doing, John, and what does justice look like for them in a case like this?
Well, I don't see justice ever being done because it's impossible to do justice on earth for what has been done. The word closure that's used when they capture somebody and then they put them in jail and lock them up. Compare that to what happened to these girls and to the knowledge of what happened to these girls in the minds of the families. And when you do that, it's impossible to have closure. You know, when you lose a loved one, maybe she was doing things she shouldn't have done. Who knows? Who cares? It's your baby. That's your baby. And that's your sister and so forth. You can't make that up and have closure because this monster is caught. You can't. You even if you put him in a death penalty, it would do no. So what? You can't make up for what happened. And the pain. What happens when a guy like this gets arrested? It brings back the pain that had been covered up with years. It brings back all the suffering and rubs it in the wound and salt in the wound, and that's what's happening.
You have been in court for a number of these hearings. What have you observed with Rex Heuermann, especially as these new charges and this evidence was released?
Well, there's a lot more to Rex Heuermann yet to be revealed, yet to be unfolded. Just watch him. I was there through both arraignments. I had a courtroom seat, and you could watch him look across. The first time he looked around, and he made note of you could see him making mental note of who was there. He looked at me. He looked at certain others, and he put a little smirk on his face. So that's the kind of man you're dealing with. But you're dealing with a guy who's involved in really what, as I said, is how else do you describe it? But extended demonic activity. And there's a question of his relationship with his family and his wife. I've uncovered new evidence, which I'm going to reveal this week, that deals with that aspect of this whole matter. But his life, his family, his house, everything around him was touched with evil.
Thank you for watching.
So, there's another perspective, I will say, of John Ray, who, I had him on my show, and I like the guy. I really do. I seriously do like him, but I don't think the evidence he's brought forth is credible, and that's my opinion. And some people beat me up on here for that, but that's okay because I have my opinion. And it's really crazy. You guys were talking about the woman who allegedly dated Rex Heuermann, and I have a little clip from Banfield, and this woman is now on Banfield. Daisy Live Live Love. Daisy Live Love became a YouTube member. Thank you so much, Daisy Live Love. Welcome to the Police Off the Cuff family. And we're growing, we're getting bigger. Schmitty, I'm seeing Schmitty in the chat. He grew up in the same house. I think his crime started before age 29. Schmitty, very possibly, but right now we have it documented that his first murder was in 1993 when he was 29 years old. And I wonder what situation brought about the purchase of the house from his mother. I don't know, Schmitty. I mean, there's so many things in this case we can investigate and look into. JW from the chat, whether he is evil or demonic is up for debate, but it is not something that will come up in court. No, absolutely not. But when they will say that without saying it by presenting the evidence, presenting that planning document, which is scary and spooky in itself. All right, I'm going to play Banfield, and the woman who we were talking about, who allegedly went out on a date with Rex Heuermann, is on her show, and we'll play a little bit of this right now. Here's Ashley Banfield.
It is one thing to sit where I am and tell you the extraordinary and tragic story of the Gilgo Beach murders. And it's one thing to sit where you are and then just try to take all these awful details in, right? But take a breath and imagine for a second that you're sitting across a table from the very man who is now accused of seeking out and torturing and killing innocent women like you or your sister or your mom or your daughter. Nikki Brass had that experience. She's a hair and makeup artist who used to work as an escort and says her date with Rex Heuermann in 2015 was one of the more terrifying nights of her life. She adds that it was also very, very strange. And she joins me now with her lawyer, John Ray. Thank you to the both of you. Nikki, let me begin with you if I can. And thank you for coming back on the air to talk about this. Obviously, in a really difficult time for you, because these were very uncomfortable details that we learned this week. A blueprint with hunting and targeting and playtime and supplies, all allegedly Rex Heuermann planning his kills. What's your reaction to the information that you've heard?
Honestly, a lot of the information I already had from him. It was said in a third person point of view, but he said that stuff before it was released. I already knew.
Tell me about that, because as I recall, he became strange on that date because he seemed to have a fixation with the Gilgo Beach body. So to walk me through what it was he started saying to you on that date.
When we first sat down, we talked about basic stuff, and then it moved to him asking if I knew anything about serial killers or was interested in it, which I did know a lot about serial killers. So we started talking about different serial killers. After we talked about them, which that was like very much third person, just somebody who read about it talking. Then he asked if I had heard of the Gilgo Beach killings, which I'm from Long Island, so I have. And that's when he started to get weird, and it wasn't third person anymore. It seemed more like somebody who was like remembering and enjoying talking about it and just way too detailed. And he said things that like I didn't remember hearing in the news yet.
Did his manner change? I mean, in the conversations you had when you first sat down, it seemed like it was kind of an innocuous shared interest in true crime. Lots of people like true crime. Did his mannerisms change as you got into the Gilgo Beach murders?
Yeah, he leaned in, he got excited. It seemed like something he like very much wanted to talk about. But not even just talk about. you know, the look in someone's eyes when they're remembering something, when they're thinking about it, when they're trying to think about details. It was like that. It wasn't like somebody who read a book and was just spewing facts. It was somebody who was trying to act like they didn't live it.
At what point, Nikki, did you realize that you needed to get out of there? Because as I understand it, he's asking you to come back to his home. And when you're saying no, he's suggesting he drives you to your home. What was your spidey sense that told you, beat it, get out of here?
He had never offered to drive me to my home. He insisted, he asked me if I was going to go with him. He had showed me a white envelope, like implying it had money, but never showed me money. And then asked if I was going to go home with him. I was like really, really uncomfortable. At that point, I had already texted somebody to meet me outside. So I told him, like, thank you for dinner, but no thank you. And like, you could tell he was like visibly like annoyed. And he was like, well, why not? And trying to understand. I was like, trying to make excuses. So I was like, you know, it's late. I really don't want to drive that far in the dark. And he was like, no, no, no. Like, you'd leave your car here. We'd go in mine. Why would we take two cars? Like, very insistent that if I go, I'm taking his car.
Do you think that you could have been one of these victims?
If I went to his house, yes.
It just gives me the chills to think that you had that strong sense to move on, to get out of there, and to ask for someone to meet with you. Thank you for.
That was she told this about a year ago, that story. And according to the Gilgo Beach task force, that one of the reasons that they took down Rex Heuermann earlier than they had intended was because he was still patronizing escorts. And they were afraid that he was still going to kill. So that was the reason that they took him down in July of 2023, was it? I think it was 2023. Yeah, 2023. And they arrested him earlier than they had intended because they were afraid that he was not finished killing. And they didn't want to be conducting surveillance as he was targeting new victims. So Ray Tierney, again, from the thumbnail on the screen, he discusses planning document evidence, what's going to muddy the waters in this case. And some of the information, of course, and the number one thing we spoke about earlier was, of course, Chief Burke. And of course, the attorney for Rex Heuermann, Michael Brown, is going to absolutely mention that. He's going to probably use that as a defense to say that, even to say as much as Chief Burke was involved in this, because he can bring whatever defense he wants into this case. And but as we look at this case, and I'm sure they have more evidence than we even know about. Mama B, I'm so glad that this lady listened to her instincts. Absolutely. And because there is no doubt that Mama B, that Rex Heuermann was still going on dates with escorts. And, the big question is, for all of us to answer, is why did he pick certain ones to kill and others not to? And one of the answers to that is he may have chosen victims when his family was leaving town, so that he had that very spacious basement, his torture chamber there, to commit the murders and to torture these poor girls. And that could be part of the answers to this, is that he wanted the freedom of doing it when no one else was around. And the most recent cases, of course, are the two women you see on the screen, Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. And undoubtedly, very soon, what's going to drop, I believe, and you can agree or disagree with me, is Valerie Mack. Valerie, that case could drop any day now. That he's going to be charged with that. What are they waiting for? Well, they're probably waiting for the evidence, just perhaps even DNA evidence to connect it. Because if you've noticed, all of the cases they have very solid physical evidence in the way of DNA. Obviously, there's no eyewitnesses to this. There's no one. When we talk about testimonial evidence, well, the only testimonial evidence we have is evidence that they've recovered. And in speaking interviews, there's no eyewitnesses, for example. So the evidence they get is, of course, physical evidence and the searching of the house. And we don't know half of the evidence they have. Let's not forget, they also searched 2 storage facilities. And, when we hear the amount of the digital evidence they recovered and that it was encrypted, they could still be working on getting into some of these devices with their computer geeks. I don't mean to call them computer geeks, and thank God we have computer geeks, because they're brilliant and recovering evidence that, when you get evidence like this planning document, that lays the groundwork. That stays so serious. July 23rd, is that the date that Rex Heuermann was arrested in 2023? I think it probably was, but thank you for giving me that date. Joanne W. from the chat, I bet he started before 1995. Possibly. Dr. Gary Mercado said that the average serial killer starts at the age 26. Based on what we know now, Rex Heuermann was 29. If, in fact, he's being charged with the murder of Sandra Costilla, and he would have been 29. Sister Mary Catherine, if my husband drugged one of my hairs or one of my daughter's hairs onto a murdered body of a woman, for someone to say the hair was planted is absolutely ridiculous, because there's other evidence besides just the DNA evidence. So to say that, and this evidence was not identified for 30 years. It took 30 years for the technology to come around, mitochondrial DNA technology from high-tech labs that have just discovered the science to identifying mitochondrial DNA. So to say that the hair was planted is absolutely ridiculous. The person that said that shouldn't even listen to true crime, because it's just throwing some nonsense into it, Mama B, how did Rex Heuermann meet his wife? How is it that he never murdered her? Well, undetermined, but serial killers, some live in nuclear families and they get along with their family members, and many times the families have no idea about what's going on. And that apparently was the case here. Lisa Mitchell from the chat, I always get nervous if a friend tells me they're using dating sites. Yeah, that could be a little scary, right? Sister Mary Catherine, if my husband, I already read that. It was up twice. Michael Gillespie, he may have dated his victims multiple times to gain trust. The escort community, Mr. Legend, they get married and have a family so that no one can see the darkness. Mr. Legend, I think you're right. In the escort community, and back then they were using the site called Craigslist, if you guys remember that site. I don't even know if it's still up. But escorts talk to each other. And if they have a particularly freaky or scary guy, they tell others about it so that others won't become involved in the same situation. And that's why I thought that it was pretty brilliant as part of this task force for the Ray Tierney, Rodney Harrison, to use the Suffolk County Corrections to interview escorts who have been arrested and to collect information from them. Because, even when I was a cop in New York City, streetwalkers, prostitutes, they gave you a lot of great information because who's out? Well, back then they were out on the street, between when most crimes occurred, between, 9 at night, 4 in the morning, 8 at night till 4 in the morning. And they were your eyes out there and they would hear things and see things and they would tell the police things, So the community of escorts can also be great for that, to report back to the police, to tell the police things, especially when there's some scary guy out there who's hurting one of them or threatening them and they feel threatened. They will tell the police that. Tony from the chat, Bill, I think you are right about Valerie Mack. Tony, I think I am right too. I think that's going to be the next one that they're going to indict Rex Heuermann for. Ogadal, the whole Madonna horse syndrome that he had. How either a woman like a mother is put on a pedestal or she is in the gutter. I think that's part of his psychosexual sadism. I really do. Candy, I wonder if Asa's first hubby was questioned. I don't know the answer to that. Chaser, could he have been making snuff films for internet use by these creeps? Seems to me there's plenty of all this leans towards snuff. Chaser, again, the Gilgo Beach Task Force is continuing this investigation, and it will find out almost everything that the questions we have. But right now, we don't know the answers to certain things. Pause update. Why is the Secret Service working this case? I wasn't aware that the Secret Service is working this case. I believe it was just the FBI was the only federal unit, and possibly the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, because he had so many guns, and gun traces are done through the ATF, through the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Evelyn Strand from the chat, how much more evidence do they need? The more evidence they have, the better case they get. Laura Desmaris. Chaser, I agree. Bracing myself to hear that money paid to see these. Why so many cameras and storage sticks, etc.? Rex Heuermann is part of some evil club. I think that they're going to tell us soon that they probably have pictures of some of this stuff, which would just be so horrific, but just so powerful as evidence in this case. And, we're all just waiting to hear the next shoe to drop. And as I said earlier, I believe it's going to be Valerie Mack will be the next shoe to drop. And Liminal from the chat, Valerie's location and condition strongly suggests Rex, in my humble opinion. Yes, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Urban Infidel, if Rex Heuermann were my father, I've had a hard time standing by him. Yeah, I think it would be very tough to do that, wouldn't it? Does anyone believe that Laura Desmaris, Sergeant Bill, can speak so well for such a long time, really knows this inside and out? I couldn't always, Laura. It's from doing this for a long time. You get the skill to speak for a long time. And thank God for you guys in the chat that know this case. Many of you know it pretty well, and we can interact. And I enjoy that a lot. That's why I always like to read the chat and put your thoughts up on the screen. JW from the chat, I think Valerie Mack as well. It would be interesting to see what they think about her. Remind washing up on the bay side of Fire Island. This would be the only victim to wash up. Yeah, that's a little bit strange, but one of the things we learned about Rex Heuermann is that his modus operandi changed over the years. And Connie, it was CIA. They have the crypto IT specialist. Okay, that was something I didn't know. I thought so they enlisted the CIA probably has all those high-tech listening guys, the high-tech computer guys. I thought the FBI had them also. Saudia Shabazz, dark web type of stuff. Yeah. Jay from the chat, is Asa still supporting Rex so she can get more drama money for her Peacock deal? I don't get her. Jay, according to Robert Macedonio, who was Asa's attorney, she still can't believe he did this. I think that's absolute nonsense. Read the document. And then the fact that she hasn't read this document, it's available to everyone online. Every single person on this world can read that document. Why would she not read it when the accused is her husband? Why would she not read it? I don't get that. Stay so serious. I hope they continue to collect as much evidence as they can to ensure this monster never sees the light of day again. I agree. Stay so serious. Absolutely horrific case. Michael Gillespie, I won't be surprised if he has another dump site on Long Island. I think they will get it from numerous devices they confiscated. Sheila Chapetta, no, the only time I sing is on Coffee with Ken and not on Police Off the Cuff. Sour Girl, I'm curious if he video recorded any of it. Well, Sour Girl, I would bet we will hear very soon that they do have pictures of some of this stuff, which would be so horrific, but so, so, so powerful as evidence. Sadia Shabazz, Stockholm Syndrome. He mentions Stockholm Syndrome in one of his documents that they recovered. And for those that don't know, Stockholm Syndrome is when a victim identifies with their captor. And that term is usually used in kidnappings. And these can be considered kidnappings, can't they? He was taking them to his basement, holding them against their will and torturing them. Who knows how long he held them, how long they were held in his basement. His family was away, right? He had as much time to do his evil deeds as the time that they were away. Evelyn Strand, Bill, what time do you do chat? I'm in Vancouver, Canada. Evelyn, if you're referring to Coffee with Canada, I try to do that around 12 p.m., 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I don't do it every single day, and I don't announce it. I just pop up, and hopefully you get notified that I'm on the air. Joanne W., yeah, he was keeping them captive for his playtime. Yeah, that's how he actually described it, Gemma, sorry if already discussed, just joined. What do we think about the John Bitroff case possibly being reexamined? Well, I think it's probably a good idea, but, they had thought that he was responsible for the murder of Sandra Castilla. And that physical evidence, those hairs on the body, took the spotlight away from John Bitroff and onto Rex Heuermann. So he's not considered to be the suspect any longer. Evidence of that, of course, being that Rex Heuermann was just indicted for the murder of Sandra Castilla, right? And also of Jessica Taylor. So that will tell us something. Mr. Legend in the chat, we lived with that serial killer until I was 21 and not one of us ever knew of his killings until we had to go to court. Like I said, it was ruined the whole family. So JW, thank you so much for the $4 super sticker. Much appreciated. Thank you, all you guys, for your support. All the new faces that I'm seeing in the chat, and I want to thank Kim Alliston. She's amazing. She's an extraordinary monitor. And also Carol Grayston, both from Great Britain. One from England, right? And one from Scotland. Is that amazing? Carol Grayston, thank you so much. And Kim also, thank you so much. Fred Aaron. Hi, Sarge. I'm on the job in Dutchess County. Listen to the podcast every day. I'm friends with someone you used to work with. Great job. Fred Aaron, thank you so much. It's rare to meet guys that know someone that I used to work with, but it happens every once in a while because NYPD is such a big job, At one time, there was over 40,000 cops. Amazing, right? And when someone says, do you know something? You're like, wait a minute. There's 40,000 cops. What's the chance? And they'll say a name. You say, oh, yeah, I do know that guy. It's pretty incredible. Great mods. Yes, absolutely. Folks, at this point in the show, I just want to always mention this, as I try to do every time I cover this case. This case is about the victims, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, and the most recent victims who have been named in this case, Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. And may they rest in peace, and may they and their families get justice from the person who did this. And again, I've always mentioned, yes, Rex Heuermann, like any other accused in our system, is innocent to proven guilty. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. We're going to stay on this case because it is also tragic, but also so interesting. And people wouldn't be covering this and talking about it all the time unless it was such. So have a great day, everyone, and God bless. I'll see you the next time.
One episode just ain't enough.